Emma Harris's heart pounded against her ribcage as she pushed through the crowded Manhattan bar, her emerald cocktail dress catching the dim light. She spotted him immediately, her ex-boyfriend Ryan, the man who had shattered her heart 6 months ago, now cozying up to his new girlfriend at a corner table. Of all the bars in New York City, he had to walk into hers. Emma ducked behind a column, breathing rapidly, cursing herself for accepting her friend's invitation to this upscale establishment. This was supposed to be her first real night out since the breakup, not an ambush that would send her spiraling back into heartache. "Just leave," she whispered to herself, clutching her purse. But pride kept her rooted to the spot. She had spent 2 hours getting ready, determined to reclaim her confidence. Leaving now felt like another defeat, another instance of Ryan dictating the terms of her life. Emma took a deep breath and scanned the room desperately, searching for an escape route or, failing that, a hiding place until she could regain her composure. That's when she saw him. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed quiet wealth, standing alone by the bar with a tumbler of amber liquid. There was something commanding about his presence, the way he observed the room with confident detachment. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but his strong jaw and intense eyes were magnetic. A complete stranger, yet somehow the safest option in her moment of panic. Emma made a split-second decision that would alter the course of her life. She smoothed her dress, tossed her chestnut hair over her shoulder, and approached the stranger with determined steps. "Please," she whispered urgently when she reached him, her voice barely audible above the jazz quartet in the corner. "Pretend to kiss me. My ex just walked in and I can't let him see me alone." Jackson Pierce had built an empire by making split-second decisions, but nothing in his business experience had prepared him for the beautiful stranger now standing inches away, her hazel eyes wide with a mixture of desperation and determination. For the past decade, he had devoted himself to transforming Pierce Industries from a struggling family business into a technology powerhouse. At 35, he had everything money could buy and nothing that truly mattered. That emptiness had driven him to this bar tonight, seeking something he couldn't name. Without hesitation, Jackson placed his drink on the bar counter, stepped forward, and gently cupped Emma's face in his hands. For a heartbeat their eyes locked, hers surprised at his immediate compliance, his questioning whether this charade crossed some invisible line. Then he leaned in, bringing his lips close enough that anyone watching would believe they were kissing, while maintaining the slightest distance, a gentleman even in deception. "Is this convincing enough?" he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. The scent of her perfume, something floral with a hint of vanilla, clouded his senses. Emma felt her breath catch. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw. "Perfect," she whispered back, aware of her racing pulse. "Just for a minute longer, he's looking this way." Jackson adjusted his position, placing one hand at the small of her back, in a gesture both protective and possessive. "I'm Jackson, by the way," he said with the hint of a smile. "Typically, I like to know a woman's name before our first public display of affection." A nervous laugh escaped her. "Emma, and thank you for this. I know it's completely insane." "Insanity has its charms," he replied. "Your ex, the guy in the blue shirt by the corner table, he's watching with what I can only describe as regret." Emma felt a rush of vindication, quickly followed by embarrassment. "I'm usually more dignified than this, I promise. 6 months of therapy undone by one unexpected encounter." Jackson's expression softened. "We all have our moments of weakness. Some of us just hide them better than others." The song ended, and a momentary hush fell over the bar before the next number began. In that brief silence, Emma realized how intimate their position had become, how natural it felt to be in this stranger's arms. "I think we've given them enough of a show," she said, reluctantly stepping back. "Thank you for being my knight in shining armor. I should probably—" "Stay for a drink," Jackson finished for her. "The least I can do is make this look authentic. Besides, I'd hate to cut short our impromptu date." Something about his smile, confident but with a hint of vulnerability, made it impossible to refuse. "One drink," she agreed, telling herself it was still part of the charade. One drink turned into 2, and Emma found herself captivated by Jackson. He listened intently as she shared stories about her work as an interior designer, her recent project renovating a historic Brooklyn brownstone, and her dream of eventually starting her own design firm. He spoke little about himself, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease, mentioning only that he worked in corporate management and had recently returned from business in Chicago. "Mysterious," she commented, raising an eyebrow. "Should I be concerned that I've entangled myself with a man of secrets?" Jackson's expression turned serious. "Everyone has secrets, Emma. Some are just more consequential than others." Before she could press further, her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Kate, asking if she was okay. Emma glanced at the time, shocked to discover it was already past midnight. "I should go," she said, gathering her purse. "Early client meeting tomorrow." Jackson nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing his features. "Let me call you a car." "That's not necessary. I can get a rideshare." "I insist," he said, already signaling to the bartender. "Consider it my contribution to your escape plan." Outside, the October air was crisp with the promise of autumn. As they waited for the car, an awkward silence fell between them, the intimacy of their fake kiss and genuine conversation suddenly giving way to the reality that they were strangers. "Thank you again," Emma said finally. "This evening turned out much better than I expected." Jackson hesitated, then pulled out a business card. "If you ever need another rescue, or perhaps a drink without the pretense, call me." He handed her the card, which bore only his name and a phone number, no company affiliation. Emma took it, fingers brushing against his. "I might take you up on that." The car arrived, and as Emma slid into the back seat, she felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and uncertainty. She had given her number to a man she barely knew, a man who had played along with her impulsive scheme without question. As the car pulled away from the curb, she glanced back to see Jackson watching her departure, his expression unreadable in the shadows. What she didn't know was that the next morning, she would walk into Atelier Design Associates for her interview with the new client, a major technology company planning to renovate their executive floor, and find herself face to face with Jackson Pierce again. Only this time he wouldn't be a mysterious stranger at a bar, but the CEO of Pierce Industries, the man who would decide whether her career took a leap forward or remained stagnant. And she had asked him to pretend to kiss her. Emma arrived at Atelier Design Associates 30 minutes early the next morning, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy pantsuit and feeling cautiously optimistic. Her small team had been working for months to secure this meeting with Pierce Industries, a contract that could transform their boutique design firm into a major player. Emma's boss, Diane, had entrusted her with leading the presentation, recognizing her talent for blending functionality with innovative aesthetics. Despite the slight hangover and lack of sleep, Emma felt prepared, her portfolio containing her best work and most ambitious ideas. "They're here," whispered Megan, the receptionist, smoothing her blouse nervously. "Mr. Pierce himself came, not just the facilities manager like we expected." Emma's stomach tightened. "The CEO? That's unusual." She straightened her jacket and squared her shoulders. "Well, it means they're taking this seriously. From what I hear, Pierce is hands-on with everything. Supposedly built the company up from near bankruptcy after his father died." Megan's voice dropped further. "Also, he's single and gorgeous, according to the business magazines." Emma managed a tight smile, her mind focused on the presentation, not office gossip about eligible bachelors. "Let's hope he's more interested in our design concepts than finding a date." The conference room door opened, and Emma's practiced professional smile froze on her face. Standing in the doorway, looking even more commanding in daylight, was Jackson, her pretend kisser, her mysterious bar companion, now revealed as Jackson Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries, and potentially her biggest client. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly when their eyes met, surprise quickly masked by professional detachment. If Diane or the Pierce Industries facilities manager noticed anything, they gave no indication. "Ms. Harris will be leading our presentation today," Diane was saying. "She's our associate design director and has personally developed the concepts we'll be showing you." Jackson extended his hand, his face unreadable. "Ms. Harris, I look forward to seeing your vision for our executive floor." Emma accepted his handshake, willing her hand not to tremble. "Mr. Pierce, thank you for the opportunity." His hand was warm around hers, the same hand that had cupped her face so gently the night before. Now it was as if that moment had never happened, or worse, as if it had been calculated. Had he known who she was all along? Had last night been some kind of test? Emma forced those thoughts aside and launched into her presentation with a professionalism born of years of practice. She walked through the proposed designs, the sustainability elements, the balance of privacy and collaborative spaces, all while hyper-aware of Jackson's gaze following her every move. He asked incisive questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of architectural principles, challenging her assumptions in ways that both unnerved and impressed her. "You've incorporated natural elements throughout," he observed during a discussion of materials. An interesting choice for a technology company. Emma met his eyes directly for the first time since the presentation began. Technology connects us digitally, but it often disconnects us from the natural world. Your employees spend most of their waking hours in this building. Studies show that biophilic design elements reduce stress and increase productivity. Your company creates the future. We want to ensure your people remain grounded in what makes us human. Something flickered in Jackson's expression, approval perhaps, or recognition. "Thoughtful," he said simply. By the end of the presentation, Emma had regained her equilibrium. This was her territory, her expertise. Whatever had happened last night, whatever game Jackson might be playing, couldn't diminish her professional capabilities. "We'll need time to consider all the proposals," the facilities manager said as they wrapped up. Jackson, however, stood abruptly. "Ms. Harris, would you mind showing me the material samples again? I have a few additional questions." Diane practically beamed. "Of course. Emma, why don't you use my office for privacy?" Minutes later, Emma found herself alone with Jackson in Diane's glass-walled office, painfully aware of the curious glances from colleagues in the open workspace beyond. "Your work is impressive," he said once the door closed, "though not as impressive as your acting skills last night." Emma crossed her arms defensively. "I had no idea who you were." "Clearly." A hint of amusement colored his voice, "though it does raise questions about your research methods. Most designers would have studied the CEO's face before pitching to his company." Heat rushed to Emma's cheeks. "We researched your company thoroughly, your business model, your culture, your needs. I didn't think I needed to memorize your face. And yet you asked me to pretend to kiss you." "A momentary lapse in judgment," she conceded, meeting his gaze. "One that I'm sure we can both agree to forget happened." Jackson studied her for a long moment. "Is that what you want? To pretend it never happened?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Emma thought of her career, of the importance of this contract, of professional boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. "What I want," she said carefully, "is for my work to be judged on its merits, not influenced by an awkward personal encounter." Jackson nodded, his expression becoming businesslike again. "Fair enough. Your work does stand on its merits, Ms. Harris. That's not in question." Relief washed over her, followed immediately by a confusing pang of disappointment. "There is, however, one element missing from your proposal," he continued. "Our Chicago offices underwent a similar renovation last year. I'd like you to visit them, see what worked and what didn't, before finalizing your designs. My assistant can arrange the details if you're available next week." Emma blinked, caught off guard. "Chicago? That wasn't in the original scope." "Consider it an opportunity to strengthen your proposal," Jackson said, his tone making it clear this was non-negotiable. "Pierce Industries values thoroughness." Before Emma could respond, Diane knocked and entered the office, her expression hopeful. "Everything satisfactory, Mr. Pierce. Ms. Harris has excellent vision," he replied smoothly. "We'll be in touch about next steps." After the Pierce Industries team departed, Diane could barely contain her excitement. "He singled you out, Emma. What did he say?" Emma hesitated, uncertain how to explain. "He wants me to visit their Chicago offices next week, to see their recent renovation before finalizing our proposal." Diane's eyebrows shot up. "That's unusual, but promising. It means they're serious about our firm, or it means he's finding reasons to delay making a decision," Emma countered, the practical side of her brain taking over. "Either way, you're going to Chicago," Diane said firmly. "This contract could transform Atelier. Whatever Pierce wants, we accommodate." That evening, Emma sat in her apartment with her roommate Kate, a glass of wine in hand, recounting the day's surreal events. "Wait," Kate interrupted, nearly spitting out her wine. "The guy you almost kissed at the bar is the same guy who could give your firm a multi-million-dollar contract?" Emma groaned, covering her face. "Yes. And now he's sending me to Chicago, and I don't know if it's legitimate or some kind of power play, or he's interested in you," Kate suggested, refilling their glasses. "That would be even worse. I can't get involved with a client, especially not one this important." Kate shrugged. Maybe not, but you have to admit it's like something out of a movie. The mysterious stranger turns out to be a powerful CEO, who now holds my career in his hands, Emma finished grimly. There's nothing romantic about that power imbalance. Her phone pinged with an email notification. Jackson Pierce's assistant confirming her Chicago trip for the following Monday, 3 days away. First-class flight, luxury hotel, car service, all arranged. He doesn't waste time, Kate observed, reading over Emma's shoulder. It's just business, Emma insisted, ignoring the flutter in her stomach. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Emma researched Pierce Industries' Chicago operations, reviewed architectural journals featuring similar corporate renovations, and packed appropriately professional attire. By Monday morning, she was focused and ready, determined to keep everything strictly professional. The flight to Chicago was uneventful, and Emma used the time to sketch new ideas inspired by her research. A car waited for her at O'Hare as promised, delivering her to the Langham Hotel with its stunning views of the Chicago River. After checking in, Emma found a note waiting in her suite. Dinner tonight 8 p.m. The car will collect you at 7:30. JP. No request, no details, just an expectation that she would comply. Emma's first instinct was irritation at the presumption, followed quickly by anxiety. Was this a business dinner or something else? The boundary between professional and personal felt increasingly blurred. She called Diane for guidance, carefully explaining the dinner invitation without mentioning her prior encounter with Jackson. It's normal to discuss business over dinner, Diane assured her. Just keep it professional. Get as much information as you can about what they're looking for and use the opportunity to showcase your expertise. Simple advice. Yet Emma found herself spending an inordinate amount of time choosing her outfit, settling finally on a black sheath dress that was elegant without being overtly seductive, professional but not austere. The message she hoped to convey: I am taking this seriously, but I am not intimidated by you. At precisely 7:30, the hotel phone rang, announcing that her car was waiting. Emma took a deep breath, grabbing her portfolio just in case this truly was about business, and headed downstairs. The car didn't take her to a restaurant as expected, but to Pierce Industries' Chicago headquarters, a sleek glass tower overlooking Millennium Park. Confusion mingled with apprehension as she was escorted to a private elevator that required a key card for access. Mr. Pierce is waiting for you on the executive floor, the security guard informed her as the elevator doors closed. As the elevator ascended, Emma's mind raced. Why bring her here after business hours? Was this about seeing the renovation or something else entirely? And most importantly, what was she walking into? The elevator opened directly into a vast space that took Emma's breath away. The executive floor of Pierce Industries' Chicago headquarters was nothing short of magnificent. Open and airy with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city skyline and Lake Michigan beyond. Reclaimed wood beams contrasted with polished concrete floors, while strategic lighting highlighted contemporary art pieces and created intimate zones within the expansive layout. It was exactly the type of design she had envisioned for the New York offices, only executed with a budget that must have been astronomical. Impressed? Jackson's voice came from behind her. Emma turned to find him leaning against a doorframe, jacket discarded, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Less the imposing CEO, more the approachable man from the bar. The dichotomy was disarming. It's stunning, she admitted, professional admiration overriding her personal wariness. The integration of natural materials with technological elements, the flow between spaces. It's cohesive without being predictable. Jackson nodded, seemingly pleased with her assessment. Follow me, there's more to see. He led her through the floor, pointing out features that worked well and others that had proven problematic. Acoustics issues in certain meeting areas, lighting that looked dramatic but proved impractical for daily use, innovative storage solutions that had become staff favorites. Emma absorbed every detail, mentally cataloging ideas to incorporate or avoid in her own design. Your Chicago team did exceptional work, she said, as they completed the tour. I'm curious why you didn't simply commission them for the New York renovation. Something flickered across Jackson's face. Hesitation, perhaps. The designer who led this project left the company shortly after completion. Creative differences. The way he said it suggested there was more to the story, but Emma didn't press. Instead, she asked practical questions about workflow patterns, executive preferences, and how the space had evolved with use. Jackson answered thoughtfully, revealing a deep understanding of how environment affected productivity and morale. "You know more about design principles than most executives," she observed. "My father was an architect," he replied, surprising her with a personal revelation. "Before he shifted to technology, I grew up surrounded by blueprints and material samples. But you didn't follow in his footsteps." A shadow crossed his features. "I inherited his business acumen, not his creative vision. Some talents skip generations, I suppose." They reached a corner office with a particularly spectacular view. A small table had been set with dinner for two, elegant china, crystal glasses, silver-domed covers concealing the food. "I thought we might discuss your ideas over dinner," Jackson said, gesturing to the table, more comfortable than a conference room. Emma hesitated, acutely aware that they were alone on the floor. The intimacy of the setting blurred the lines between business meeting and date in ways that made her professionally uncomfortable. "Is anyone else joining us?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "From your Chicago team, perhaps?" Jackson held her gaze steadily. "Just us. I find large group discussions dilute the creative process, but if you're uncomfortable—" "I'm not uncomfortable," Emma replied, perhaps too quickly. "Just clarifying expectations." A hint of a smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough. My expectation is a productive discussion about how to improve on Chicago's successes and avoid its mistakes for the New York project, nothing more." Something in his tone challenged her, as if daring her to acknowledge the tension between them. Emma chose instead to focus on the work, taking a seat at the table and opening her portfolio. "I've been sketching some revised concepts based on what I've seen today," she began. The dinner progressed professionally enough, with Emma sharing her observations and Jackson offering insights about company culture and executive needs. The food, from a renowned Chicago restaurant, was excellent, but Emma barely noticed it, caught up in the exchange of ideas. Despite her initial reservations, she found herself enjoying the intellectual challenge of sparring with someone who understood both the business and design aspects of the project. "You're not what I expected," Jackson said as they finished their meal. Emma raised an eyebrow. "What did you expect? Someone who goes around asking strangers to kiss her in bars?" He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. "Someone less formidable, perhaps, less willing to push back on my suggestions. If you wanted someone who just says yes, you hired the wrong designer," Emma replied, emboldened by the successful exchange of ideas. "Good design requires honest conversation. I'm beginning to see that." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Which is why I'd like to show you one more thing before you leave." Jackson led her to another set of elevators, this one requiring both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. Emma's curiosity overcame her caution. "Very high security for an office building," she commented as they descended. "What I'm about to show you isn't officially part of the Chicago renovation," he explained. "It's a personal project, one that might inform your work on the New York offices, if you're interested." The elevator opened into what appeared to be an experimental workspace, part laboratory, part design studio. Models and prototypes lined the walls, while interactive displays showcased what looked like revolutionary office concepts. "What is this place?" Emma asked, moving toward a particularly interesting 3D model of a modular workspace. "The future, if I have anything to say about it," Jackson replied, watching her reaction. "Pierce Industries isn't just about technology as you currently understand it. We're working on integrating technology into environmental design in ways that fundamentally change how people work." He demonstrated several prototypes, furniture that adapted to users' physical needs throughout the day, lighting systems that adjusted based on circadian rhythms, acoustic technology that could create perfect sound isolation without physical barriers. Emma moved from display to display, her designer's mind racing with possibilities. "This is incredible," she breathed, examining a material sample that changed properties based on temperature. "Why keep this secret? This could revolutionize workplace design." "Because it's not ready for public consumption," Jackson said, "and because our competitors would do anything to access this research." The implication hung heavy in the air. Emma looked up from the prototype she was examining, suddenly understanding. "That's why you brought me to Chicago. You're vetting me." Jackson didn't deny it. The designer who worked on this floor, the one who left over creative differences, attempted to sell our proprietary technology to a competitor. We caught her before any damage was done, but it was a wake-up call about who we trust with sensitive information. Emma set down the prototype carefully, a chill running through her despite the comfortable temperature. So this was a test? Bringing me here, showing me all this. It was to see if I'm trustworthy. Partially, Jackson admitted, but also because I believe you have the vision to incorporate these concepts into the New York design. If you're interested, and if you can be trusted with the confidentiality this requires. Emma took a step back, professional interest warring with personal indignation. And our meeting at the bar, was that part of your vetting process too? A flicker of something, regret, crossed Jackson's face. That was coincidence. I didn't know who you were until you walked into the presentation. Convenient coincidence, Emma said sharply, her mind connecting dots that suddenly formed a troubling pattern. Or maybe you knew exactly who I was and orchestrated the whole thing, testing me in multiple ways. Jackson's expression hardened. You approached me, if you recall, after you positioned yourself perfectly in my line of sight. The sense of betrayal Emma felt was disproportionate to their brief acquaintance, yet undeniable. Was Ryan even there? Or was that just the right prompt to get me to approach you? You think I planted your ex-boyfriend at a bar to manipulate you into a fake kiss? Jackson's tone was incredulous. That's quite an elaborate conspiracy theory, Ms. Harris. The return to formal address stung more than it should have. Is it? You just admitted to bringing me to Chicago under false pretenses to test my trustworthiness. Where exactly should I draw the line on what you're capable of? They stood facing each other across the prototype-filled room. The easy rapport of dinner evaporated. Emma felt foolish twice over, first for the impulsive bar encounter, now for believing there might be something genuine beneath Jackson's interest in her work. I think I've seen enough, she said coldly, gathering her portfolio. Thank you for the tour and dinner, Mr. Pierce. I'll incorporate the applicable elements into my revised proposal. The non-confidential elements, of course. Jackson blocked her path to the elevator, his expression troubled. Emma, wait. You've misunderstood. Have I? She challenged. Then explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, you've been manipulating this situation from the beginning. Before he could answer, the elevator doors opened and a security guard stepped out, expression grim. Mr. Pierce, we have a situation upstairs. There's been a breach. Jackson's demeanor changed instantly, CEO mode replacing whatever personal conversation they'd been about to have. What kind of breach? Physical and digital, sir. Someone accessed the executive floor and the secure servers. It is tracking the intrusion now. Jackson turned to Emma, his expression unreadable. Stay here. It's secure. I'm not staying anywhere, she replied, stepping toward the elevator. I'm going back to my hotel. It's not safe, he said sharply. The breach might be connected to what I just showed you. Emma paused, the implications sinking in. You think I'm connected to this? The flash of doubt in Jackson's eyes was answer enough. After everything, the kiss, the dinner, the professional respect she thought they'd established, he could still believe she might be involved in corporate espionage. Your timing is certainly interesting, he said carefully. The hurt transformed instantly to anger. Check your security footage, Mr. Pierce. I've been with you continuously since arriving. Unless you think I have accomplices or superhuman abilities, I couldn't possibly have orchestrated a security breach. The security guard cleared his throat awkwardly. Sir, we should go. The authorities have been called. Jackson hesitated, clearly torn between handling the crisis and resolving their conversation. We'll continue this discussion later, he told Emma. Johnson will escort you to your hotel when it's safe to leave. Don't bother, Emma replied, her professional mask firmly in place. I'll find my own way back and take the first flight to New York in the morning. You can contact Atelier Design if you still wish to proceed with our proposal. As Jackson disappeared into the elevator with the security guard, Emma was left alone among the prototypes of a future she would no longer help create. The excitement she'd felt viewing the innovations had been replaced by a hollow feeling of disappointment, not just in Jackson's suspicion of her, but in her own susceptibility to whatever this had been. A business relationship complicated by attraction, a test of character, or something more calculated than she wanted to believe. What Emma didn't know was that upstairs, security footage was already proving her innocence, and revealing a familiar face behind the breach, someone whose appearance would shatter Jackson's composed exterior and force him to confront a past he thought he'd left behind. Someone whose presence would draw Emma deeper into a situation far more complicated than a simple case of mistaken intentions. Emma sat in her hotel room, methodically packing her suitcase as dawn broke over Chicago. Sleep had eluded her, her mind replaying the evening's events on an endless loop: the breathtaking office tour, the productive dinner conversation, the revelatory prototype lab, and finally, the accusation in Jackson's eyes. She had called the airline and secured a seat on the 7:30 a.m. flight to New York, determined to put as much distance as possible between herself and Pierce Industries. Her phone had remained silent all night. No apology, no explanation, not even a courtesy message to confirm she had returned safely to her hotel. Whatever Jackson Pierce had initially seen in her, as a designer or otherwise, had clearly been overshadowed by suspicion. As Emma zipped her suitcase closed, a sharp knock at her door startled her. Peering through the peephole, she was surprised to see not Jackson, but a woman in a crisply tailored suit, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. "Ms. Harris," the woman called through the door. "My name is Victoria Winters, head of security for Pierce Industries. I need to speak with you urgently." Emma opened the door cautiously. "I'm leaving for the airport in 20 minutes. Victoria's expression remained impassive. "This won't take long. May I come in?" Once inside, Victoria got straight to the point. "First, I want to apologize for any implication that you were involved in last night's security breach. We've confirmed you had nothing to do with it." "How generous of you," Emma replied dryly. "Is that all?" "No." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Pierce has requested that you delay your return to New York. The situation is complicated, and he believes you may be able to help." Emma laughed incredulously. "Help? After he practically accused me of corporate espionage? Why would I help him with anything?" "Because the person who breached our security was looking for information on you," Victoria said quietly. Emma stared at her, the words not immediately registering. "What?" "The intruder accessed your visitor profile, your security clearance, and traced your movements through the building. They also attempted to access Mr. Pierce's private communications regarding the New York project." Victoria paused, studying Emma's shocked expression. "Does the name Alexis Chambers mean anything to you?" Emma shook her head. "No. Should it?" Alexis was the lead designer on the Chicago project, the one who left over creative differences, as Mr. Pierce put it. "The one who tried to sell company secrets," Emma recalled. Victoria nodded. "She's also Mr. Pierce's ex-fiancée, and the person who broke into our systems last night." The pieces started falling into place in Emma's mind. Jackson's wariness, the elaborate security, his personal stake in the innovative designs. "Why would she be interested in me?" "That's what we'd like to find out," Victoria replied. "Mr. Pierce believes you might be in danger. The intrusion wasn't just about Pierce Industries, it was targeted surveillance of you specifically." Emma sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "This is insane. I'm just a designer who happened to pitch to your company. There's nothing special about me. And yet you're the first person Jackson has brought to see the prototype lab since Alexis left." Victoria's use of his first name suggested a familiarity beyond professional boundaries. "He sees something in your work, or in you, that resonated with him. Something that apparently threatened Alexis enough to risk criminal charges by breaking in." Before Emma could respond, her phone rang. An unknown Chicago number. She answered cautiously. "Emma." Jackson's voice was tense, lacking its usual controlled calm. "Are you still at the hotel?" "Yes, with your security chief," she replied coldly. "Who's been telling me some interesting stories about your ex-fiancé? I'm on my way to you now. Don't leave the hotel. Please," he added, an unusual note of vulnerability in his voice. "I owe you an explanation and an apology." 20 minutes later, Emma opened her door to find Jackson looking nothing like the polished CEO she'd met in New York, or even the more relaxed version from dinner. His hair was disheveled, his expression haggard, as if he hadn't slept at all. "May I come in?" he asked, the formality at odds with his appearance. Emma stepped aside wordlessly. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, not waiting for an invitation to continue. "For suspecting you, for not being honest from the beginning about Alexis, for putting you in this position." Emma crossed her arms. "Victoria says your ex is stalking me. Care to explain why?" Jackson ran a hand through his already messy hair. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it." He met her eyes directly. "Alexis and I were engaged while she was designing the Chicago offices. She had full access to the prototype lab, to all our research. The relationship ended when I discovered she was planning to sell our proprietary technology to competitors. She claimed it was her work, her vision, that I was stealing her ideas because I lacked creative talent of my own. Was she right? Emma asked bluntly. No, Jackson said firmly. The innovations were collaborative, developed by our R&D team with her design input. But when we broke up, she became fixated on the idea that I had betrayed her creatively and personally. And now she's fixated on me because— Jackson hesitated. Because I showed interest in your work. In you. The admission hung in the air between them. Emma processed his words, remembering the security guard's interruption the previous night. The breach wasn't a coincidence, was it? She saw us together. She's been monitoring my calendar, apparently. When she saw I'd scheduled a private dinner with a designer from a competing firm, she assumed the worst, that I was replacing her professionally and personally. Is that what you were doing? Emma asked quietly. Jackson held her gaze. I brought you to Chicago because your design concepts impressed me. They were innovative in ways I haven't seen since Alexis. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't also intrigued by the woman who had the courage to approach a stranger in a bar with such an unusual request. Despite herself, Emma felt a smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't my finest moment. It was honest, Jackson countered, unlike so much of what I deal with daily. And then when you walked into that presentation room and I realized who you were, it felt like fate, or at least a coincidence worth exploring. Until you decided I might be an industrial spy, Jackson winced, a momentary lapse in judgment, one I regret deeply. The echo of her own words from their first meeting wasn't lost on Emma. She sighed, her anger beginning to fade. So what now? Your ex is watching me because she thinks I'm her replacement. She's been apprehended, Jackson assured her. The authorities have her in custody. But her actions raised concerns that she might have accomplices, or that she might have shared information about you with others who could pose a threat. What kind of threat? Emma asked, alarmed. Probably nothing, he said quickly. But I'd feel better if you stayed in Chicago for another day or two, just until we're certain. Under protection, of course. Emma considered her options. Return to New York and potentially face unknown dangers, or stay in Chicago under Jackson's protection and continue whatever complicated relationship was developing between them. If I stay, she said carefully, it would be as a professional courtesy only, not because of whatever personal interest might exist. Jackson nodded, looking both relieved and disappointed. Of course, I completely understand. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of security briefings, design discussions, and careful distance between Emma and Jackson. She remained at the hotel while investigators confirmed that Alexis had acted alone, driven by jealousy rather than corporate espionage. Emma used the time to refine her designs based on what she had seen in Chicago, incorporating elements of the innovative technology without revealing proprietary details. On her last evening in Chicago, Jackson invited her to dinner, this time at a public restaurant with Victoria and other Pierce Industries executives present. The conversation remained strictly professional, though Emma occasionally caught Jackson watching her with an expression that suggested he was restraining himself from saying more. As the dinner concluded and the others departed, Jackson asked if she would walk with him along the Chicago River Walk. The night was clear, the city lights reflecting off the water as they strolled in companionable silence. Your revised designs are exceptional, Jackson said finally. The committee was unanimous. Atelier Design Associates will get the contract for our New York renovation. Emma smiled, professional pride warming her. Thank you, though I hope the decision was based on merit, not guilt over recent events. Purely merit, he assured her. In fact, I recused myself from the final vote to avoid any appearance of impropriety. They stopped at a quiet spot overlooking the river, the gentle sound of water providing a peaceful backdrop. Emma, Jackson began, his tone shifting to something more personal. When we return to New York, things will be complicated. I'll be your client. There are boundaries that should be respected. I'm familiar with professional ethics, she replied, wondering where he was heading with this. Which is why, he continued, I wanted to ask you something while we're still in Chicago in this strange limbo where the lines aren't quite so clearly drawn. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Ask me what? When this project is complete, when I'm no longer your client and you're no longer my designer, would you consider having dinner with me? not to discuss work or prototypes or security breaches, just dinner, as two people who met in a bar under unusual circumstances. Emma studied his face in the moonlight, seeing vulnerability beneath the confident exterior. The attraction between them was undeniable, but she had worked too hard to risk her professional reputation on a relationship that might not last. "That would be months from now," she said carefully. "I'm willing to wait," Jackson replied simply. "Some things are worth the patience they require." The sincerity in his voice touched something in Emma. Perhaps it was the way he had respected her boundaries, despite their unusual beginning, or how he had prioritized her safety, even when it complicated his business. Whatever the reason, she found herself nodding. "When the project is complete," she agreed, "I would consider that dinner invitation." Jackson smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "I'll hold you to that, Miss Harris." "I expect you will, Mr. Pierce." 6 months later, the New York executive floor renovation was completed on time and under budget. Emma's design had incorporated elements inspired by the Chicago prototypes while maintaining a distinctly New York aesthetic, bold, innovative, yet practical. The project had garnered industry attention and brought Atelier Design Associates a flood of new, high-profile clients. Emma had been promoted to design director, with Diane hinting at a partnership opportunity in the near future. Throughout the project, Emma and Jackson had maintained strictly professional interactions, their Chicago agreement unspoken but remembered. The attraction between them had simmered beneath the surface of every meeting, every email, every phone call, but neither had crossed the line they had drawn. On the evening of the renovation's official unveiling, Pierce Industries hosted a celebration for everyone involved in the project. Emma circulated among the guests in a deep green gown that complemented her eyes, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her design choices. From across the room, she occasionally caught Jackson watching her, his expression warm with admiration and something more personal. As the party began to wind down, Jackson approached her, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "To a successful completion," he said, offering her one. Emma accepted the glass, their fingers brushing briefly. "It turned out even better than I envisioned." "Some things do," he replied meaningfully. They stood in comfortable silence, sipping champagne and watching the remaining guests. "I believe we had an agreement," Jackson said eventually, "about what happens when you're no longer my designer." Emma smiled. "I recall something about dinner. Tomorrow night. I know a place that doesn't require pretend kisses for entry." She laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. "I'd like that." As they stood together on the executive floor she had designed, surrounded by the fruits of their professional collaboration, Emma reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. From a desperate whisper in a Manhattan bar to a relationship built on mutual respect and carefully maintained boundaries, they had navigated complications neither could have anticipated. Tomorrow's dinner would be a beginning, not as CEO and designer, not as strangers playing roles, but as Jackson and Emma, 2 people discovering what might exist between them without pretense or professional constraints. Whatever happened next, Emma knew it would be authentic, built on a foundation stronger than their impulsive first meeting. "I've been thinking," Jackson said, breaking into her thoughts, "about that night at the bar. You never did tell me what your ex did that made you so desperate to avoid him." Emma smiled ruefully. "He said I was too focused on my career, that I'd never take risks for something that really mattered." She met Jackson's eyes. "I think I've proven him wrong on both counts." Jackson's hand found hers, a private gesture in the crowded room. "Definitively," he agreed, "though I must say, I'm grateful for his poor judgment. Without it, you might never have whispered those 7 words that changed everything." "Pretend to kiss me," Emma recalled softly. "Not exactly a conventional beginning." "The best stories rarely start conventionally," Jackson replied, his fingers tightening around hers. "And ours, I think, is just getting to the good part."